Welcome back. In this recipe you will find a few ingredients and a few techniques that will challenge your skills. So let's start with the hazelnut pâte sablée. Here are the ingredients that we will need. 80 grams of Callebaut pure roasted hazelnut paste, 100% hazelnuts. 250 grams of butter. 170 grams of powdered sugar. 4 grams of salt. 100 grams of eggs. 125 grams of hazelnut flour. 500 grams of all-purpose flour. These are the utensils that you will need for this step. Mix the soft butter at 24 degrees Celsius with the hazelnut paste, powdered sugar and salt. Using a spatula, push the mixture back to the bottom of the bowl. Add the eggs slowly until completely incorporated into the butter mix. Add the hazelnut flour, scrape well to the bottom of the bowl, and then finally add the all-purpose flour until just incorporated. Mix until the dough is warm. Do not overmix to prevent the dough from shrinking in the oven. Pour the dough over a plastic sheet and make it square. Leave to rest in the refrigerator. Start rolling out the dough to obtain 2.5 to 3 mm thickness. What is great about using the plastic sheets is that you don't need flour and it does not stick. Using the bicycle, cut the dough into long strips of 26 centimeters. Put another plastic sheet on top of the dough strips. It will prevent them from drying. Then, put in the fridge for at least 1 hour. Using a 7 to 7.5 centimeter ring cutter, cut your dough into round shapes. Then again, protect with a plastic sheet to avoid drying. It's really important that the width of the dough strips is the same as the height of the ring cutter. Now, put the metal rings over the silicone mat. Place the silicone strip on the sides of the mold. Add a rectangular strip of the dough on the silicone strips, and then cut off the excess with a knife. Push the dough to the side. Press well, and finally put the discs inside the molds. I like to use silicone strips because it helps to have an even cooking regardless of the power of the oven. And also it gives a nice texture. Bake at 160 degrees Celsius for about 18 minutes. This will depend, of course, on your oven. Now we will do the second component, the almond biscuit. These are the ingredients that we will need for the almond biscuit. 80 grams of Callebaut almond praline, 250 grams eggs, 10 grams of almond oil, 150 grams of powdered sugar, 150 grams of almond flour, 170 grams of egg whites, 1 gram of cream of tartar, 50 grams of sugar, 50 grams of flour, and 2.5 grams of baking powder. Now let's take a look at the utensils you will need. Mix the eggs, almond praline, powdered sugar, almond flour, and almond oil at medium speed. Scrape down the dough to the bottom of the bowl. Then, mix until obtaining a fluffy texture. Using the tabletop mixer, mix the egg whites with 1/4 of the sugar and the cream of tartar until obtaining a frothy texture. Sift the flour and baking powder together over parchment paper. Incorporate the egg whites into the first mixture and mix well. Finally, add the flour mix. Mix well until obtaining an homogeneous mixture. Pour the mixture over onto a silicone mat. Bake at 200 degrees Celsius for about 12 minutes. This will depend, of course, on your oven. Now, let's unmold. Put a parchment paper on the biscuit, and then the cooling pan, and flip it over. Using the 7 cm ring cutters, cut the biscuit. Wrap the biscuit rings with cling film. Let's move on to the caramel with passion fruit. These are the ingredients for the caramel with passion fruit. 335 grams of cacao barry mi-crio cocoa butter, 100 grams of sugar, 60 grams of passion fruit puree, 40 grams of heavy cream with 35% fat, 80 grams of glucose syrup, 60 grams of condensed milk, 2 grams of vanilla beans, and 170 grams of salted butter. Now let's take a look at the utensils. Cut the vanilla beans in half lengthwise and scrape the vanilla bean seeds. Then, in a saucepan, heat the passion fruit puree, cream, glucose syrup, vanilla seeds, and condensed milk. This has to be above 50 degrees Celsius. If the cream is not hot enough, it will create a thermic shock with the caramel. Caramelize the sugar using a heavy bottom saucepan. Add the sugar slowly and little by little to avoid any lumps. Deglaze the caramel with the hot cream. Boil the mixture for 1 minute. Pour the mixture into a tall recipient and strain it to make sure that the final mixture is perfectly smooth. Cool down the caramel until it reaches 40 degrees Celsius. Emulsify well using an immersion blender and set aside. Now let's do the assembly. Now let's take a look at the utensils. Pour the caramel into the piping bag. Add the biscuit into the tart shell. Then, pipe the caramel into the tart shells and fill them completely. Put them in the fridge for 10 to 15 minutes to let the caramel set. Let's take a look at the ingredients for the chocolate and caramel mousse. Here are the ingredients that we will need. 275 grams of Callebaut recipe A23 milk chocolate, 380 grams of heavy cream, 35% fat, 140 grams of sugar, 225 grams of heavy cream, 35% fat, 2 grams vanilla beans, 2 grams salt, 42 grams of gelatin mass 200 bloom. Now let's take a look at the utensils. Whip the first amount of cream until obtaining soft peaks. Scrape the vanilla beans. Mix the second amount of cream, the salt, and the vanilla seeds. Bring to a boil and set aside. Caramelize the sugar. Deglaze with the hot cream and add the gelatin mass. Place the chocolate into a tall container. Then, pour the hot liquid into the tall recipient using a strainer to make sure that the final mixture is perfectly smooth. Using an immersion blender, mix until attaining a very smooth mixture. Finally, slowly pour the chocolate onto the whipped cream and mix until obtaining an homogeneous texture. Transfer the mixture into a piping bag. Pipe the mousse into the molds and fill them completely. Freeze until solid enough to be on mold. Let's take a look at the ingredients for the chocolate glaze with passion fruit. 360 grams Callebaut recipe A23 milk chocolate, 150 grams of passion fruit puree, 100 grams of sugar, 170 grams of caramel powder, This is caramelized sugar processed in a food processor. 270 grams glucose syrup, 192 grams of condensed milk, 205 grams gelatin mass 200 bloom, and 110 grams of neutral glaze. For this component, you will need the following utensils. Mix the passion fruit puree, sugar, caramel powder, and glucose syrup and bring to a boil. Add the condensed milk and gelatin mass and strain. Pour the mixture over the chocolate. Add the neutral glaze and mix using the immersion blender to obtain an emulsion. Cover with a plastic film and let the glaze set overnight in the fridge. Use at 31 to 33 degrees Celsius over a frozen mousse. For the decoration you will need some Callebaut A23 milk chocolate and gold flakes. Now let's take a look at the utensils. Pour some pre-crystallized chocolate onto a plastic sheet. Place a second sheet on top of it. Then, using the rolling pin, spread the chocolate until obtaining a very thin layer. Wait for a few seconds until the chocolate crystallizes. Press the ring cutters, using 3 different sizes, on top of the plastic sheets. Place your decorations in the fridge for 5 minutes and let crystallize. For the assembly, you will need the following utensils. Peel off the 7.5 cm chocolate rings off the plastic sheet and place them on top of the caramel tarts. Unmold the frozen mousse, place them over the cooling rack, and pour the glaze onto the mousse until completely covered. Using the wooden skewer, put the mousse over the hot plate in order to melt the excess glaze. Then, stick it to the top of the caramel tart. Using an offset spatula, take off the 2.5 cm and the 3.5 cm coins and put them on top of the glazed mousse to decorate. For the final touch, sprinkle some gold flakes. This is the finished product. I hope you have enjoyed it. We have successfully created some challenging recipes and some components for this tart. The flavors of hazelnut, chocolate, passion fruit, and caramel are a winning combination. I am sure that this product will help you boost your sales. Don't forget to share your creations using the following hashtag. I'd really like to see what you make with this. Until next time, see you soon.